Innovation is in our veins. Soon the whole world will know our names. Sharing our knowledge and freedom reign. We here for the people, you know it's our way. Setting foundations is part of the dream. It doesn't matter if you're new to the game. Listen up now, cause we all gon' say, elevate, 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 higher, elevate, 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 higher. We gon' rise up, we all gon' shine. Work through adversity, stay on the grind. Elevate, elevate, this is our time. Elevate, elevate.
Welcome to the Elevate Podcast, everyone. It's so great to have you all on one more time. It's your boy Josh.
And Reg.
And we're grateful to be back on with you yet again. Can you put that frame back on you one more time, Reg? Let's just edit that a little bit. Oh, yeah. Oh, look. Let's get it right in there. Oh, look at that. Oh, yeah. Looking great. Awesome. Well, those on YouTube can enjoy that piece right there.
You can see my $10,000 tooth.
Hey, yo. We'll get to that story later. It was so awesome to have you all on with us. It's been a great week. To those, depends on how you view it. What we're doing is, politics sucks. Let's be honest. And a bunch of losers talking about it on a podcast is no better. But, we're going to do our best to enjoy, have some fun, and really engage in the humor of the chaos that's happening in our country and happening in our lives. Are the haters really going to be able to continue hating? Good question. We are diagnosing this online hate bill that's come in. We're talking about, obviously, the Winnipeg lab situation happening there. And then, well, I think we are unofficially in World War III as well. So we'll be talking about all those things as well. We have Reality Shannon joining us later on in the show to talk about her whole TikTok creation, what she's been doing, what brought her to this point in her walk and a journey at this point in time. She'll be joining the show as well. We're super excited to have her on. So Reg, how you feeling, big dog?
Oh, good. Speaking of journeys, I'll give you this week on the segment of what happened to Reg at work.
Oh, gee, here we go.
So this one actually, we were talking a lot about hate, and this one actually is a love note to the show, which is really nice because I was across the province all last week. I went from tip to tip. I went from Yarmouth all the way to Cape Breton and visited emerges all across the province to kind of get a feel for what are things that can be done and are being done right now to make life better for the people that work there and for the people that they serve. And I won't get too much in that because I don't want to get myself in trouble, which is where this came through. So picture this. I'm in the bustling metropolis that is Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, and I'm on my way into the Emerge to go talk to some of the folks there. And a little email pops up in my feed, and it says, "Hi, Reg, are you one of the hosts of the Elevate podcast?" And that was it. And I was like,
"Where'd you get this from?"
It was internal.
Oh, gee.
Internal. And I was just
spooky.
Like, crap. I was like, am I getting canceled by my work? And sure enough, I replied to the person. I was like, yes, I am.
It's over.
Yeah. I was like, I see that you're with this branch of our work. And I was like, is everything all good? And he was like, oh, yeah, no worries. And then he had this to say. He said that the podcast came up in his recommendations on YouTube, and he was surprised about several things. And one, that was Canadian, and two, that a couple of guys from Halifax were running it, and that more importantly, your takes on government shenanigans were balanced, as opposed to all you people who said otherwise the other week. So,
wow,
suck it. And he said, so not only were they were balanced, thoughtful, and humorous. I think you and Josh have a good chemistry, and his harder edge combined with your softer approach provides a good balanced approach to it. And so, thank you so much, sir. And you will remain nameless as we...
Probably for the best.
Yeah, as we need to. So I appreciate it, and we appreciate it. And it put a smile on my face after giving me a mild panic attack at first.
True. Yeah, it was me. I wrote that one. Sorry, man.
Yeah.
I just really want to get some good positive vibes going. No, I'm just kidding. No, that was fantastic. I'm glad to hear that came through in the vein of good news.
Oh, yeah. I knew that's what was happening.
Bitcoin all-time highs were hit this past week. Woo! Suck it, Trudeau. That's how I like to see it. If you listen to that jabroni, well, sorry, that sucks. But those who have continued to invest, continue to not give up in what's happening, well, you are sitting pretty these days. Mm-hmm. It was like around a year and a half ago, Bitcoin is sitting around 25,000, 26,000 Canadian. Today it's at 90,000. So all the people who are chirping me, giving me a hard time, saying Bitcoin's fake. It might be, but right now it's looking very real. So I'm stoked.
Do you know what? More money has been made off of fake money than you can shake a stick at. So,
True.
I mean,
I was just learning from our governments, honestly.
Yeah. I love that if you remember when they were talking about what went down with GameStop, and they were like, we can't just have people pulling money out of thin air. And it's like, what do you think you're doing? So as soon as I saw that you had the little Bitcoin on your computer and you're waiting, I was like, I know what he's getting at.
Absolutely. Because it does remind me of like when that was, I believe it was the gentleman, this was down in the States. He worked for the Federal Reserve. And he was really upset about what was happening with GameStop.
Yeah.
And that was the crazy part. You mentioned like the first half of that statement. It was the second half of that statement. It was bonkers, where it's like, these guys who are in crypto are making money out of thin air, but we can do it because we're the government. And I was I'm like, did he actually say that out loud? I was like, gee, these guys really are just flaunting in our faces while they can. So it depends on what Trudeau you want to listen to. Justin Trudeau, don't listen to that guy because he, tried to fearmonger everybody out of Bitcoin. But if you listen to his brother's a huge Bitcoin maxi, and he knows what's up. So,
well, they hate each other.
Yeah.
Allegedly,
they do.
We don't know them personally, but from everything that I've seen, even in the mainstream media, they're not friends. No. They do not like each other. One's born of Fidel, the other one's born.
That's tough, dog. That's tough. Well, that will, I think, you saying that probably is going to get us arrested here.
Oh, probably.
Yeah. Bill C-63, baby. How you holding up? How you feeling? How you doing? Keep it moving. That's what's just happened this past week. We've this came out last week. People are really upset. A lot of people have covered this story at this point. Why are we covering it? Well, we've received multiple requests that have come in saying, hey, can you please cover this bill? And I'm like, there's so many other sources out there. Like, I feel like this has been covered ad nauseum at this point. And they said, yeah, but it's just a little too complex. Like, really, if we're talking bare bones reality, there's a lot of fear mongering. There's a lot of like, oh, it's not a big deal type of scenario. Like, we trust you guys. What is your perspective on this? So I figured, let's pull up the bill for what it is, read it out, and then talk about what could happen based on these things. Before we start, Reg, did you want to kind of mention anything in intro before we look at this?
No, just like I get where people are worried about this bill because it seems like our government just has a real hard on for like limiting speech. And so that's where, and again, I remember saying this, I don't know if it was last episode or the episode before, it's like all these, so-called good intentions are always veiled with the idea that it's to protect the children. Always, always. And it's funny when you think about, on the side of history, when has limiting free speech ever been a good thing? It's never been a good thing. And I think we had a conversation not too long ago where I said, what are your thoughts on hate speech? And you're like, I don't think it should exist because I think that all speech is just speech. And earmarking some of it as hate and some of it is not. I don't think that we should be doing that. And it did give me pause to think about it. So I think it's kind of fun to kind of look at this bill now. Fun in a sad way because I'm like, oh God, please don't pass this bill.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think you bring up a good point because I believe democracy does thrive in darkness is what I understood growing up. But secondly, watching old videos of Fidel Castro, very interesting of how he got into power. Watching videos of his interviews before he got into power, then his interviews being in power. Look at the topics he hits on. Hits on social justice really hard to be able to gain power. It's a thing. This happens quite frequently. Veiling things as with great intentions is perfect. That's just what they do. It's par for the course with people who are trying to gain power and just limit citizens' rights.
Yeah. Well, I know I'm going to butcher this, but like shout out to my Star Wars fans. Isn't it like they said, is this how democracy dies? By thunderous applause? Ooh. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and that was produced back in the 70s. Mm. It's that idea that, we're going to be welcoming in our own demise. And this is what this bill feels like to me.
Absolutely.
But we'll dive in. We'll do a deep dive.
All right. The proposed online harms bill. So this was introduced on Feb 26. And they're saying here is a baseline standard for online platforms to keep Canadians safe. Safe is a very important word to keep an eye on here. To hold online platforms accountable for the content they host, Bill C-63 will create stronger protections for kids online and better safeguard everyone in Canada, everyone, from online hate. The bill sets out a new vision for safer and more inclusive participation online. And this is what they contain a list. The proposed Online Harms Act would specifically target 7 types of harmful content that sexually victimizes a child or re-victimizes a survivor, intimate content communicated without consent, content used to bully a child, content that induces a child to harm themselves, content that foments hatred, content that incites violence, and content that incites violent extremism or terrorism. Under the Act, social media services would be subject to 3 duties: a duty to act responsibly, a duty to protect children, and a duty to make certain content inaccessible, specifically content that sexually victimizes a child or re-victimizes a survivor, and 2 intimate images posted without consent. So that's bare bones kind of what the bill's bringing up. These things happen, you're going to jail.
Straight to jail.
Straight to jail. And that's kind of what ends up happening is they bring up the criminal code. The bill also proposes change to the criminal code.
But pause there for a second. Go back up. So we look at the first couple. Content that sexually victims, excellent. We want to make sure that people are not becoming victims or re-victimizing. Intimate content communicated without consent, again, excellent. Content used to bully a child, that is kind of a little bit gray. But I'll give it a thumbs up, maybe like a side thumb, because what is bullying, what is not, it's hard to say. But where they have the child at the end of it, I'm like, okay, I can get on board with that one. Content that induces a child to harm themselves, 100% thumbs up for that one. Content that foments hatred, what is that? That one is, I put a big star beside that one. Content that incites violence and content that incites violent extremism or terrorism. Those are the 3 at the bottom that you need to be worried about and being paid attention to. Because remember what we were saying about the truckers during the convoy? They're terrorists, they're full of hatred and they're violent. All these words were used by the government and by media at that time for people who were protesting. And so when you have that kind of language in this bill, that's where people go, uh-oh. So the first 4 points, like I said, great, keep it. The last 3, that's where I'm going. No, there's the part that they're actually looking for.
Absolutely. And then kind of going through these bills, they kind of talk about the outcomes of potentially what could happen. So they can either fine you up to $20,000 or up to life in prison for anything that they deem as violating these laws.
Yeah, anything that is covered by those 7 points.
Mm-hmm. So this is the thing I have an issue with. You bring up some great points of like, yeah, I could get on board with this. I could do without that, this, that, the other. Majority of things that are listed on this are already covered in the criminal code. Mm-hmm. What are we doing here? As you said, the one that you pointed out, I think was right. Content that foments hatred. Super vague. What's that even mean? And then as well as content that incites violent extremism or terrorism. Like these are things that are already laws in this country. Like that's just not even allowed, period. Like they're just regurgitating the same trash over and over again. So the one that really does stick out is the hatred situation. I feel like that's a way to shoehorn that into the actual criminal code so they can go after people and put them in prison. That's what I see happening. That's what does concern me about this.
See, what I wonder, and this might take a little more research, but is there actually criminal code written about inciting violence or inciting hatred or inciting extremism or terrorism? Like extremism and hatred are the 2 words that I pick out, because you have violence and terrorism. We know that those are pretty obvious, right? If you're terrorizing a population, we have laws on that. If you have violence, that's pretty obvious. You're being violent against someone. But it's the hatred and the extremism. How are we now criminalizing extremism? So if somebody deems that your view is extreme, is that now a crime? Mm-hmm. And that's the part that I'm like, uh-oh.
Yeah. Yeah, and admittedly, I've had a few people come up to me. The reason why they want us to cover this was because of fear of like, what does this actually mean? Like, are they going to come after Joe Schmo for saying something that the government disagrees with? Like, where's this go? That's why we want this covered. And admittedly, the way that's stated now, as we stated at the beginning of the show, it is super vague, but it's vague enough that we don't really know how they're going to apply this if it gets through.
No.
But we have an idea of where they could go, and that's where the fear sets in for people. Like, ooh, we've already seen you freeze people's bank accounts over just donating to a cause. What are you going to do to the everyday person? We've already seen people debanked in this country, separate from the convoy.
Yeah.
People who just were seen as dangerous online. Scotiabank called them one day and said, yeah, we're no longer serving you.
Yeah.
That's happened. And that continues to happen in this country. So there's legitimate concern. So seeing more of this come down the pipe, I think people should be rightfully concerned and be talking to your MPs.
Yeah. And so the big thing is that because you'll have a lot of people who sit on the left and far left who will say, yeah, but this is good. We don't want hatred. We don't want extremism. Like, we want people to be fairly moderate, which is fine if you have a altruistic, fairly moderate government. But let's say that you get a ultra right-wing conservative government in there who is just like out for blood and doesn't want to have any far left views. Suddenly now that's hatred because of some of the things that they're saying. And then you're in trouble. So this doesn't work for anybody. Just as soon as government changes, if they've made this law, the next government will use it to their advantage. And so what you have to do is you have to actually look at this and say, how can this be bent by either side of the aisle if they get into power? And both would bend it. And so that's the thing that we have to look at this. And we can't be like, well, I'm a liberal, I'm a conservative, I'm whatever, I'm right, I'm left. You have to just look at this holistically and say, how can this be used badly by either party? And both parties could use this badly, because what it does is it silences free speech. It silences free thought and freedom of expression. I would say this would violate the charter if you actually looked at this being used badly. So yeah, everybody needs to be on board and not on board with this bill personally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Our charter's Swiss cheese at this point. Hope you like it on your pizza, because this government has continued to show that they have no regard for the Charter of Rights in this country. Even so much so they came out and said it when something was deemed unconstitutional in this country. They said, yeah, we're going to appeal that. We don't believe in that. Like, it clearly was wrong because it was a hate crime. That's not what a hate crime is. I hated it. That's how they feel, right? So I'll say an Office reference there. But that's kind of how this government operates. Is what are you gonna call hatred? What's gonna be hate crime? Is it because Freeland hated it? Is it because Trudeau hated it? Is it because some jabroni named Sean Fraser from Pictou County hated it? What's it gonna happen? And so, yeah, admittedly, they came after podcasts earlier, like last year. Now they're trying to turn this around and go after everyday people. It's a snowball effect. I feel like they keep trying to get away with more and more. The only way it stops is you just trying to get loud. You have to get loud. That's the only way things work at this point, is if you stay silent, it's just going to go right on through. And you're going to get at your doorstep from the police saying, you said this online last night.
You've been served.
Enjoy this $20,000 fine. You can't. Oh shoot, you can't pay it. Prison. That's where this goes. Does it seem extreme, Josh? That's not happening. I can't. There's no way that will happen. If you talk to Josh Udall in 2019, talking to Josh Udall in 2019 is a very different person he'd be talking to in 2024, because there's a lot that's happened in the past 4 or 5 years that I just never thought would be possible. And that's how I feel.
And I feel like that's kind of where I'm at too, because I feel like I have a lot of friends that I've alienated a little bit, where I've said, I never thought that this would happen in the Canadian government. And then I look at what's been happening and go, holy crap. Like, I can't believe this is actually our government. Like, it's making me question, is this a place that we, continue to thrive in, or is this a place that we're being oppressed in? And if you look at anything coming out of the rest of the world, they're looking at Canada and they're going, oh no, like, what's happening to that place? And it's pretty bad when you've got the Americans going, Canada, are you okay? And like, you see this all the time. And that's one of the beautiful things about TikTok, is that they haven't quite shut it down yet. And And they really are. They're asking if we're okay. And then you see the Canadians commenting back and they're like, nah, no, we're not. And so I think one of the big things is just that there's some solidarity in everybody knowing that, you know, this isn't okay. You're not being gaslit, that we are all feeling this too. And that these kind of bills don't help anyone. It doesn't help anybody on the left. It doesn't help anybody on the right. It's censorship at its best. And like I said, it's veiled in the protect the children, and it's censorship underneath the veil. So those last 3 points in this bill, that's what you need to pay attention to, because they just shove that in like an omnibus bill.
Yeah. And I remember talking about it months ago, but when I was down in Maine talking to some of my friends who are Democrat voters, and I told them what was happening in Canada, their jaws dropped. They themselves who are lefty have been like, well, wait a second, what bill was passed up there? What is happening? Why isn't Meta allowed to show things on Instagram news-wise? Why isn't Google showing news up there? What's going on? Like, they were just flabbergasted that was happening. And I'm like, these are lefty people. And so what happens in this country, and it's what happens really in any country that ends up getting taken over by this by an overwhelming ideology, is they cease media, how it works. And they, as you said, they'll gaslight you and make you feel like you're alone, make you feel like you're crazy, make you feel like you're an extremist, that you shouldn't be listened to. We hear you. We're with you. We understand you. And we are doing our best to do so in let other people know as best we can without craziness, like without trying to be what the Conservatives were in Parliament a couple months back, where they start going crazy, start yelling out off their lungs. Yeah. We're trying our best not to do that. We're trying to reason and trying to grow, but there's going to be times where we understand, at least I'll speak for myself. I understand. I hope it doesn't, but it could come a point where you have to get more firm. You have to get more serious. You have to be more stern. The more things get pushed. And that's why I feel like people have come out against our podcast in the past few months saying, you got them further right. It's because we've seen further and crazier ideologies pushed in this country. So we've had to speak up louder and more firmly and more stern. And I feel like that's offensive to people who are on the other side of this. So.
Yeah. It's hard too, because like we're human beings, mm-hmm. right? When you constantly keep getting beat down in these different ways, it's hard to stay light. And we do try. But every once in a while, we're like that Conservative member in Parliament with his big old belt buckle, and you're just like, what are you doing? So we do try and keep it light because, if you dive too deep into this, sometimes it can make you tired. It can make you crazy. It can make you say things you don't want to say to people you care about. So we try to take an objective approach to all this. Mm-hmm. But every once in a while, a little bit of that craziness slips out from both of us, just because it is enough to make you kind of like shake your head and go, what is going on in this country?
Absolutely. Well, I was really stoked, dude, when you were reading off that message from a listener earlier on the show. And you turned to the camera and said, suck it. I was like, man, he's my old DX 90s wrestling vernacular is rubbing off on you. So I'm really happy about that.
Oh, good.
Let's go. I'm so pumped. So pumped.
I got told the other day that I have golden retriever energy. Yeah. And they were like, you're always happy. You're always smiling. You're always willing to help somebody. Well, apparently not tonight.
Yeah, it's golden retriever energy for Reg. Has anyone told you that they find you annoying?
Maybe. I don't know. Not to my face.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, because that's what I've been seeing on TikTok, where it's like people, like, I find that swiftly follows after the golden retriever energy. It's like, yeah, they're just annoyingly positive and they can't stand to be around them. So I was curious if you've heard that at all.
I haven't, but I think that's because like I can be very positive and very, outgoing, but at the same time, be like, let's rip this person a new one. And like I can see it's bad because like I was saying today at work, like I'm not a very funny person. But my humor I think is a little darker and a little more dry than what a golden retriever would probably fall for. And so yeah, my problem though is that if I'm ripping somebody up, I go too deep. And then I have to apologize after, because like I'll be like, yeah, basically, because like everybody will say something and like chirping somebody, and I'll be like, yeah, and that's why your wife left you. And everyone's like, too far, man, too far. I'm like,
this man really
just cutting right straight to the bone.
Let's get to the point here. Gee, I love that for you. But yeah, speaking of crazier things are happening. This whole Winnipeg lab situation, it's obviously being talked about. Those who follow politics are just like, yeah, this is getting blown up in media. For those who kind of follow, half-heartedly, just because you actually have a life and have things to do in your life, we understand. Scientists were fired in a Winnipeg disease lab here in Canada, finding out they were spreading secrets to the enemy. Wild. And people are a little upset, a little worried of what's happening. And it was 2 scientists who were working in a very high security lab in Winnipeg, working on infectious disease issues, who were sharing information with the PRC, People's Republic of China. The Public Republic. The People's Republic of China, and as well as the Wuhan lab. Mm-hmm. Anyone knows where that name comes from? And people are like, gee, what is going on? They had to finally fire these 2 scientists. And now people are pointing fingers at the Liberal Party. They're like, how'd you let this happen? The Liberal Party are like, in 2019, we didn't really know what was going on. We found it in 2023 that we probably should get rid of them. But it wasn't our fault, it just happened. And the Conservatives are coming out with Pierre Poilievre is in the press with a big stack of papers being like, what are these guys doing? These guys suck. So lots of finger pointing happening, and people have been like, no one wants to take responsibility, as per usual. And that's where we're at, is now compromised information has been going over to the Communist Party of China. And especially in light of what happened in 2020, this is where we're at.
Yeah. See, the problem is that I don't think the wars of the future are going to be fought with trenches and with weapons. I think we're going to be fought with economic attacks and biological attacks, where it's, just, oops, this disease just entered the population. Mm-hmm. So, and what's funny with this specific story is that we knew that China was interfering with our elections, that they had secret police doing things. And so that there's plants everywhere. And so the fact that the Liberal government was like, well, I don't know. I don't know anything about this. It's like, on one hand, you can be like, yes, you may not have known that they were leaking secrets, but as soon as you found out, you fire them, you deport them, you get them out of the country, get rid of them. Mm-hmm. Or throw them in jail.
Should be.
Yeah.
They should be in jail.
Yeah. But the fact that everybody's just like, I don't know, maybe we'll fire them. And it's like, what is the point of CSIS?
Yeah. What are you doing out here? Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, this is where I want to come back and really remind the listeners of, we're going back in history. And I really want you to do your best right now to ignore political stripes. All right? Because we've known China's been interfering in our business for at least 12 years at this point. It goes back. I got articles from 2012 right now, big boy. Who was in power in 2012? Stephen Harper was in power. The Conservative Party was in power. And they have known and knew that they were warned by CSIS as early as 2012 that China was trying to interfere with cabinet ministers in Ontario. They knew that they were being targeted by China through Huawei. UK, the US said, we're not bringing Huawei in here. And Harper's like, well, they can come to Canada. The US came out and said, Canada's not cooperating with us. They're just allowing this company to come in and work intelligence operations and work within our frameworks. We can't trust Canada on this. That was when Harper's in power. So when the Liberal health minister comes out and says, well, this happened in 2019. We didn't really know what was going on. We've known that China's been screwing with us for so long. You even knew they screwed around with our elections and you just didn't talk about it or tell us about it. This has been going on for a long time. So don't give me this BS. Somebody in government has got to take responsibility and be like, you got to go. Actually, psych, you're not going anywhere. You're staying right here in Canada and you're going right in a maximum security prison, and we're not letting you get any more information out to our enemies. This is ridiculous.
Yeah. And what's also interesting is that when people talk about how is China interfering with our elections? So there is the direct use of force the subtle use of force. But then there's also things like...
Gee, clip that one out. Oh. I'm so sorry, dude.
No, you're good.
Oh, gee, that sucked.
Dying over there.
Yeah. Let's freaking go. Sorry.
Got some disease from the Wuhan lab.
Dude, the Wuhan coming at me hard out here, dude. Sorry.
All right. So when people ask, like, how is China interfering? You do have the subtle interference, the subtle use of force. But then the other part of it is the fact that they're also not using force. They're just using targeted ad campaigns where they're actually pushing the campaigns of candidates that they like and candidates that they know will disrupt certain areas or be friendly to China or whatever. And so they're actually interfering in that way, just through advertising and through targeted, focused showing of certain candidates and certain ideas and certain ideology. So it's a little more nefarious than we realize. And the fact is, we know this because CSIS has published on this. And then also because we have people who've leaked that CSIS has known about this. And then what does our government do? They said, oh, we're going to go after those whistleblowers.
Not wrong. That's kind of how things are operating these days, right? It happened in the 2016 election with Russia put a lot of money into Facebook ads to influence the American election as well. Whether you like it or not, there was some serious Russian interference during the 2016 election as well. There was interference in the 2020 election in the American election. There likely will be interference in the 2024 election. There is literally people believe that the last true election happened in 2008 in the States. That was the last true election before things got wicked crazy with social media and just the manipulation of the public.
Was that a true election? Because I think I certainly remember a certain Bush getting it in and this other certain Bush that was governor of Florida and all the votes disappeared. And
yeah, you would be wrong.
Okay.
Because Bush was out. He had already done his 8 years. It was Obama. It was change. That was the big year.
Okay.
And that was like he got overwhelmingly voted in, period.
Yeah, but I was saying like the last true election, like when we're talking about when elections weren't being messed with. Mm-hmm. And I was saying, remember when all the votes from Florida just like happened to go missing and then they found them at the very last minute?
Yeah, 2004. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, absolutely.
So you think that was still a true election?
I'm talking about the 2008 election, the last true election. That's what I'm saying. I'm not talking about 2004 or 2000. Obviously, I think there were shenanigans there too. But I do think 2008 was an honest election.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. You?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I'm being clear. On this. Allegedly, it was a great election, okay? Oh, boy. So lots of, obviously, there's been so many shenanigans happening, especially as technology's progressed. I think you bring up some great points. Yeah, through social media, through pushing different ideologies and putting pressure on different MPs. There's a reason why take a gander, think hard and why the Chinese government was putting pressure to make sure conservative MPs were not getting positions of power because they had such an anti-position against Beijing. They wanted people, which would be the Liberal Party, who were very much in favor of Beijing, to be in power. And they saw what Justin Trudeau had to say back in 2014 about the basic dictatorship of what's going on in China. So I was like, yeah, well, let's work with these guys. They seem like they want to work with us. I think that's kind of where a lot of this ended up lying because, sure, obviously, I know I'm painting a broad brush at this point, but what I mean is when the leader of one party is like very friendly with who you are, you're obviously going to try and weasel in where you can, get into the cracks, and make sure that the guys who are saying, get Beijing out of here, aren't going to be getting into positions of power in the country.
Yeah. But what's funny now is like even watching those leaders kind of shun Trudeau on the international stage.
True.
Trudeau goes over for the handshake and the guy just doesn't even turn his head. And then he has to like try and like, ooh.
Dude, the one part that was crazy was when Xi Jinping undressed him.
Yeah.
In front of everybody. That was crazy. I was like, man, Trudeau looked like a punk when that happened. That was, again, one of those moments where it's like, wow, this is the guy who's leading our country. Just got absolutely punked. But anyways, we're going to move on. This came up last week as well. Big news came out. And I think it's something that should be put on everyone's radars. We reposted a TikTok from last year when we talked about when Biden went over Ukraine, gave them $500 million, and really increased tensions between the West and Russia. After Biden made that visit to Ukraine, Russia then pulled out of the nuclear arms deal with the West that we're not going to use them. The arms deal with the West where they were going to only limit how many nuclear arms they were going to build. They pulled out of that deal, and I was like, this is not how you de-escalate a situation. And so that was concerning to us a year ago today. Now we had Francis Macron come out and says he does not rule out Europeans sending troops to Ukraine. He came out in a press conference and he said, yeah, we could very much likely put NATO troops in Ukraine to work for intelligence, work on the ground with troops in Ukraine. Wasn't saying they're going to be combative troops, but we all know what they're going to be doing there. And Russia came back. Putin said, well, if you do that, we have nukes that will reach America. And I was like, not a fan where this is all going. Why am I going to get screwed over in all this process and the way this thing keeps getting pushed? And so people are a little nervous. News kind of blew up, and think about Thursday last week with this situation that came out. And I think people should be concerned. I think they really need to keep an eye on it. I know it's hard because there's so much that's going on in this country with our current leaders. But keep an eye on what's happening outside of our borders as well, and what NATO's saying, and what their rhetoric is with Russia and how they're trying to push Putin. Because Putin's come out very clearly and said, if you push us anymore, and you start actually getting into hot war with us, we're not pulling any punches. We'll come right at you.
Yeah, and this is where I'm concerned because, well, one, I've got a personal concern because I was in the military. I was a medic for 3 years in the military, so it's like, if they start calling people up, my number is going to be called. So, and like, I don't want to fight in some proxy war between rich people and more rich people.
Yeah, true.
That's not what I want. And I don't think that's what the bulk majority of us want either. The other thing that I'm concerned about is that I would hope that the governments of Canada would say, no, we're not going to enter this until this like becomes a problem where we're starting to see things fly in the air towards our direction. But after listening to Poilievre's comments, like that's what I'm concerned about, because I would be more happy if Poilievre would have come out and said, listen, we condemn like what happened in Ukraine, like the fact that Russia came over and did that, like not cool. Like we don't support this, but I'm worried that he would bring us into a war. And I'm genuinely worried about that. The other worry I have is because if you keep Trudeau in power, it's like we're going to just have a war on our doorstep where, you know, Putin's going to come and walk all over us. So it's like, I don't know. And Jagmeet Singh is going to do anything. So I don't know. I don't know how you win there. And so this is going to be a wait and see and watch kind of situation. But yeah, I'm deeply concerned about this one. And this is one I wish that we would be talking about more openly in our parliament, because right now what's happening is like, I'm so sick of hearing about the arrive can. Like, I get it, Conservative Party of Canada, like, we call it scam. Like, great. We all know that. It's like small potatoes compared to the amount of money that the Liberals have wasted in other means. So, like, I get it. You've got this one. Cool. But this is like the stuff that actually like keeps me awake at night, not the arrive scan.
Yeah.
So.
Love it. It's what I mean by love it is the fact that you keep calling it arrive scan.
Yeah, instead of scam.
But yeah, I agree. I mean, Trudeau just gave $3.2 billion to Kiev
exactly
this past week for building museums.
I know. This is where I'm getting emotional because I'm like, for a freaking museum, do you realize how many houses that could build in our city right now? Like they're removing tents right now as we speak. And there's people who are homeless and who need shelter and who need food and who need care. And we are building a freaking museum in a far off country. What the hell?
We wanted a museum here. And Team Houston said, no, we actually got to build houses here. Why can't we get a museum? Ukraine gets a museum. We want a museum.
Yeah, that was for art too.
Yeah. We got stuff to show here, man. What the heck's going on?
Get our Maud Lewis going.
Yeah, seriously. Dude, yeah, there was a lot in this massive bill or money they just sent over to Ukraine. And it's just to rebuild their infrastructure, to rebuild what they're doing over there. And I'm like, what in God's name is happening right now? Like I read it and just confused.
Yeah.
I'm just like stunned that it's just happening, flying right in our faces, and we can do nothing about it. It just reminds me of a line that The Rock would spew a lot back in the early 2000s. You do something stupid, tick off the whole crowd, and you look at them like, and there's two things you can do. Absolutely nothing and like it. That's how I feel about this.
Yeah. That's exactly right, because I'm looking at this. Well, we have no mechanisms in our country to oust this leader. If you have a minority government here that is joined hand in hand with the NDP and then oftentimes with the Bloc as well, I mean, what are you going to do? And to take an aside here, when you're looking at polling data, I'm concerned because I know that there's like a big projected landslides and things like that. But when you actually look at the amount of people who are voting for different folks, if they wanted to, and if they got another minority government, they would form another coalition government. It would be right back into where we're at. So that's a second concern that I have just coming up on when we go to our elections is the fact that people can't just go, oh, they've got this. It's like what Jennifer L said, like you have to play to win at all times. Mm-hmm. So, and this is one of these things that I think that the conservative government needs to call out. They need to say, hey, the fact that you're building a museum in Ukraine while we have people sleeping on the street in Toronto, in Halifax, in Kitchener, in Vancouver, in Calgary, in every city in this country, no matter how big or how small the province, PEI has people sleeping on the streets that they never had before in tents. PEI, the population of PEI fits into Bedford, Nova Scotia, a community of Halifax. So this is where I'm like, this is where they need to start poking holes in things. $3.2 billion overseas of tax dollars. We don't have that to give away, unfortunately. It'd be wonderful if we were a rich nation like Saudi Arabia or something like that. Where's their donations? I mean, they've got Palestine, Israel right there. Why aren't they donating any money to people? Why aren't they airdropping food? And these are the questions that are not being answered. And this is what annoys me. So I'll leave it at that. You be the judge and make your own decisions. But right now we have people that are hurting in our own country and in our own borders. And that's where the money needs to go.
Absolutely. And the question then also comes down to this. And there's a slight detail I forgot to include in this that kind of really frustrated Putin, was the fact that official declarations were made to bring Ukraine into NATO.
Yeah.
That's really what set this
and that's what he said too. And the worst part is that we watched together the Putin interview. And before we even started, we're like, 98% of this is going to be crap. Like, he's the biggest propagandist out there. And what concerned me is the amount of people on the right who are just like, yeah, Putin. I was like, no, this man is an evil dictator who has people killed. Like, no, we're not on his team here. But like, that's where I'm concerned that like we've degraded our own governments and we've lost so much trust in our own governments that we're now supporting a dictator.
Rooting on dictator.
Yeah.
Well, there was one individual, it's actually Tim Pool, that put it in the best way possible. He's a content creator down in the States. And the way he put it was, Putin's a bad dude. Joe Biden is also a bad dude. And then in our case, Justin Trudeau is a bad dude. But the reality is, there are bad dudes. And they at least have a runoff of interest with us to a degree. As much as they're doing things that are against our interests, them wanting to get rich, them wanting to do well for themselves, the runoff from that is going to benefit us more than whatever Putin wants to do. And that's just the reality of it. It sucks, but it is what it is.
They call that choosing the lesser of two evils, basically.
Yep.
Yeah, so where we were going with that, though, is the fact that Putin did talk about the fact that some of these things that are happening right now, like Ukraine joining NATO, these are the reasons for the war starting in the first place. And I think that that's partially true, but I think the other half of it is that he's also an imperialist that wants to, reunite Mother Russia and have himself like up there along with Catherine the Great and all of his other war heroes. So, I mean, he runs around, shirtless, bareback on a horse for Pete's sake. Like the man loves himself, and is a little out there. But in that one instance, like he's not wrong. Like bringing Ukraine into NATO was the thing that he said he didn't want, and that was the line. And then he saw the writing on the wall, and then this is where this war came into play. And that's where I was like, Russia didn't have any credibility until they did that. And I was like, crap.
Yeah. And then on top of that, allegedly America blew up the Nord Stream pipeline.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh, well, Russia did it themselves. And it's like, this is like their one specific thing they really rely on for their commerce. Why would they blow that up themselves for a simple red flag, of a false flag? That makes no sense to me. But when you look at Biden's interview 6 months prior saying Nord Stream might just go away if Russia does anything to Ukraine. Oh, Russia goes in Ukraine. Oh, Nord Stream pipeline, boom, goes away. But we want to say Russia did it. Got it. Makes sense to me.
But we digress. We got to bring this a little bit into a lighter sphere of things because we're getting too heavy.
You're getting too heavy? Is this too heavy for you? Bro, I'm doing 175 chest press right now, baby. I'm ready to go all night. Let's go. Just kidding. But yeah, we will move on to our next topic here. Your boy is pumped. For our next segment, we have Reality Shannon coming on straight from the unreal farmlands in Nova Scotia, straight to your TikTok phone. You know her as a blue-haired crazy, or as we're going to bring on the show as the awesome Shannon, who she is. Shannon, welcome to the show. Super happy to have you. How you doing?
Hi, thank you for having me.
No problem. Super stoked. Quick question that we do have for you, straight from the cuff. Where did this blue-haired character come from? Like, what? Like
it's blueberry. You have to.
Sorry,
Blueberry, yeah,
my
blueberry.
bad.
Shocking name for her, really.
Yeah.
I just thought that she would be fun. I thought it'd be fun to create little skits. She is kind of a loophole to get around community guideline violations.
Oh, really?
Because there's certain. Yeah. So there's certain topics on TikTok that you can't really talk about. Like it's very, they're very sensitive about it. So I kind of use her to get around that. And it's been pretty effective.
No kidding. Admittedly, you were super convincing. So when I first came across you, I think it would have been like a year and a half ago, I'd say. I saw your TikTok. I legitimately thought it was a real person. I was like, oh, here we go again. Another one of these nut jobs out here who actually believe in what these things are.
And that's the fun part of it. That's fun for me too. It's really fun watching people like get fooled by it. I almost gotta get out the popcorn and read the comments,
Well, because you nail it,
kind
though.
Of a form. It's kind of a form of entertainment for me.
Yeah.
I was actually influenced by another creator on TikTok named Lauren. I came across one of her videos. I'm like, this can't be real. She almost fooled me, and her satire is master level. I was like, wow. And she kind of gave me the idea to do that.
Yeah. And there's been some pretty big names that have picked you up too.
Yep.
I mean, I think you were picked up by Ben Shapiro and...
Yeah, I made a video about Jordan Peterson, and it kind of went viral. And next thing I know, I'm getting a notification. It says Brett Cooper, like from the Daily Wire, duetted you. So I was like, wow, that's cool. And then like 4 months later, I get a notification. Ben Shapiro tagged you in a video, and he's reacting to me. And I'm like, I had to do a double take on that notification. I'm like, is this real? And it was. It's a verified account. And then next thing I know, Jordan Peterson is tweeting it, and my friend is messaging me saying, "Hey Shannon, did you know that you're on Australian news?"
No.
So I was like, "What?" So it was crazy. I never expected this to happen at all, because I just thought it would be a fun little outlet for me to vent about the insanity of the world today. That's ultimately why I created it. And my name is Reality Shannon because I feel like we, like as society, are kind of diverging from reality, like objective reality too, like in terms of like gender stuff. So yeah, that's really why I created it. But so I didn't expect it to reach this many people, and I didn't expect this many people to care about the things that I have to say. So it's been kind of crazy.
Dude, it is amazing, and it's really super cool. My favorite part about it is the fact that you are from Nova Scotia, and like that really excites us because
yeah, everyone thinks that I'm from Alberta. Like,
same here. Same here. They think the same thing about us.
Like, no.
Or either that or that we're American, one of the two that typically happens because our ideas are so chaotic and people just can't fathom in Canada. That's like, if you're not living in Alberta in America, then how are you living anywhere else and believe what you believe? And we're just like, well, we believe the same things that we've always believed, but now we're seen as extreme right, which is kind of chaotic.
Right. Yeah. And you guys are far right extremists like myself.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you're platforming me right now.
Dude, we're surprised too.
You're so brave to be platforming me.
Oh, thank you.
Dude, we do our best out here. We're here fighting the good fight, but we're mainly curious from your background, your perspective. What brought you to kind of creating the content you're creating? As you said, it's been an outlet. You've been seeing things, and you just really, in some ways, what I understood is you just can't stay quiet anymore. What kind of what was your journey from like where you were at, say, what was Shannon looking like in 2017 to now Shannon in 2024?
Oh, yeah. I'm kind of flipped. I went through kind of a bit of a metamorphosis, I suppose.
Wow, that's a big word.
Prior to 2020, I was working in long-term care. I was definitely more left-leaning. I voted liberal. I was a hardcore evangelical vegan.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. Big vegan. And I was a proud childless cat mom. And I feel like I'm totally not that anymore.
I feel you on that one too, because it's just, sometimes that happens and you're like, okay, what was the breaking point? Like what personally was it for you?
A lot of stuff happened. I feel like 2020 was a really significant year for a lot of people. There was the American presidential election, and I feel like as Canadians, we're quite immersed in that. There was the fiery but mostly peaceful protests. And then there was the pandemic and the extreme measures that went along with that. And I kind of became aware of what I call the machine, which is government, mainstream media, and social media kind of actively trying to shape my perspective on things. They're feeding me narratives and things that were verifiably false. And they had their fact checkers, which I considered to be like the Ministry of Truth. And there was a whole bunch of silencing of dissent online, political censorship. And it all felt very 1984 to me. I was like, I am not down with this. And it was the left that was in favor of it. And I'm like, no, you guys aren't supposed to be like this. And then we had then there was the convoy. And it was just weird seeing that, the media portraying it one way and then me seeing it in a totally different way with my own eyes. So, we got to deny what we are seeing and hearing. So because of all that happened, I basically became less friendly towards left-wing government. I was like, this is not cool. I don't like this. It's just way too authoritarian for me. But I mean, in hindsight, should we have trusted somebody who openly stated that he admires China's basic dictatorship.
Yeah.
I mean, that should have been a big red flag right there. But yeah. So that kind of, that all of that changed me. And I married a conservative man.
Oh, gee.
He wasn't trying. Yeah. And he kind of rubbed off on me a little there. We had a baby. I became a stay-at-home mom.
Dang.
And between all of those things, it kind of flipped. I kind of had a flip happen. And that kind of shaped me, who I am today, I suppose.
But I totally get that, because I think that for me, because I feel for your story, because I feel like I was the same way. I was very pro-earth, like very green. I was all about the electric cars. And so that was my thing. I did a master's in sustainability and resource and environmental management. So like my whole thing was like, we're going to save the earth, right? And
yeah.
And it was funny because it was like not until I was watching, like you said, watching everything going down with the 2020 pandemic, or I guess 2019, 2020. And I was like, I'm not liking this. This doesn't feel right. I feel like I'm being gaslit a little bit here. And then totally. And then when we had our daughter, I was like, what kind of a world am I actively shaping? And that was kind of what pushed me to kind of reach out to these guys when they were first doing the Elevate podcast, because they had brought up something about the carbon tax. I was like, I know about this. And then that blew up. And so that was what kind of pushed me in. But I really do, when you said about like, you became a mom and you, when you have another life that you have to support and you have to think about, you really don't have time to mess around. You have to be like, okay, what kind of future am I actively shaping?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a big thing, becoming a mom, like totally. I feel like my brain chemistry just changed totally.
It definitely did.
Yeah, it did. And, now I'm focused on, the future and what's that going to look like. But, and I do think, it's good to, want to help the planet and stuff like that. But I also don't think it should come at the cost of citizens. I think you need to find ways to, not cause harm in the process, if you know what I mean.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And as time has gone on, the political rhetoric continues to heat up in any country at this point. America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, like a lot. We're seeing it everywhere. And I think for you, as you've been kind of posting things online, the heat continues to turn up on you. You're getting people who are getting a little bit more agitated, a little more frustrated, and starting to take it out on you. And so I'm curious for yourself, especially as someone who's a new mom and got a family to think about, like, how have you been kind of combating this online hate, essentially, and kind of dealing with people who are just really not happy with the content you're putting out and wanting to let you know about it?
Yeah, actually, I don't really care. So
that's a mic drop moment. That's awesome.
Hypocrite.
That's an awesome.
I'm just like, I feel like, I am a part of this. Like, I do think we are in like a culture war, and I'm in like the front, like I feel like kind of like in the front lines of that.
Definitely.
And, I'm just ready to take whatever, I've had so many people come at me, and, I've had death threats and, different stuff, especially like, I feel like people get the most fired up over like gender stuff, because I am critical of that, of things like that, when it comes to women's sports and stuff like that. I feel like that's an equality problem. And where I have a daughter, like I want her to live in a world where she has equality. So I'm very critical of things like that, but that community, I get the most hate from that community.
Yeah, for sure. And I kind of feel that, because like we spent way too long one podcast episode on that topic to the point where I said to Josh, I said, we need to like cut like a good half an hour out of this. But it's, I have a daughter as well.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we got to make sure that we are not building a world where we've just kind of flipped things. Like we want to make sure that they do have a space where they can compete against, other women, and that they feel safe in their body, and they're comfortable. And one of the things that my wife said to me, she's like, she was very active in sports. I'm like the worst at sports. And she was saying, like, had this been the rhetoric that was pushed, when she was a little kid, she's like, would I have been confused about who I am just because I like to play sports and because I like things that are not traditionally girly? And she's like, I want our daughter to be able to live in a world where she can pick whatever she wants and still be a woman. And I'm like, amen to that. Like, all the way.
Exactly. I was a huge tomboy growing up. I was into Hot Wheels. I had an amazing Hot Wheels collection. And I'm just like, I get thinking, I'm like, what if I had been born to the progressive parents of today? They might look at these as cues, and try to shape me into, anyway, it's so strange because we're like, I thought we were supposed to be moving away from these stereotypes, right? But it almost is confirming it.
Absolutely.
So.
And it's a question I ask myself. Sometimes I ask this to Reg, and I'll ask it to you. Say tomorrow, things go back to just normal levels of, whatever it was. Say 2018, kind of like those levels of politics of just, it's chilling out. Actually, sorry, no, we'll go to, screw that. No, we're going all the way back to 2014. Things were like, before like politics got psychotic with, Trump and all that. We go back to 2014, things just level out, chill out. It is what it is. You believe what you believe. I believe what I believe. We still love each other. It's awesome. Say tomorrow it goes back to that. What happens with you, Shannon? What do you do?
Geez. I mean, I guess I retire, So, there's nothing to talk about now. Everything is in harmony again.
Mm-hmm. Well,
yeah, I mean, I would love that. I used to, like 10 years ago, you could have friends with anybody. And now, like, I say one thing and it is like, it's a horrible thing to say. And to me, it's something benign. And all of a sudden I'm painted as this evil person that people can no longer, talk to anymore. And so they cut me out of their lives. And that has happened. That's happened to friends. That's happened to family. And it's been happening to everyone. It seems to be, a pervasive thing in our culture today. And it's really sad, it's really sad because I'm definitely open to being friends with anyone. Doesn't mean that I'm not going to be critical, but I'll be friends.
Absolutely. I mean, it seems like you and Reg have both had those experiences. Reg, I'm sure we'll dive into it a little bit himself, but like he's had a rough go with friends being like, Reg, you've changed the past couple of years.
Yeah.
I don't know. And me talking to Reg, I'm like, dude, you're so left. Get out of my face right now. But we're able to have respectful conversation and disagree on things and have those debates. Whereas now it's just really, there's something wrong in the force if we disagree on one topic and we can't be associated with each other anymore. I totally understand. It's a weird time, and I can totally identify with it. Just myself, I agree. This podcast started as a business podcast. And that's how I wished it stayed. I didn't want to get into politics, but similar to you, the current environment led me to, I'm like, I got to talk on this stuff. I can't do this anymore. This is crazy. You took me out of the woodwork. I just wanted to live my life, make some money. Now I got to come out and start talking about politics. Gee whiz.
Yeah. And the thing that I found is just like, I think we're all searching on some level for community as well, because when we're all being collectively gaslit, it's like, do you feel like you're being gaslit? Do you feel like you're being gaslit? And then everybody's like, yeah, actually. And I was kind of saying before, like, I feel like because of the way the needle's moved, I think the bulk majority of us are kind of sitting in that quietly conservative space where, you can't really say your views too loudly because you don't want to get run over. But I think that like one of the other reasons why I really joined this podcast too was the idea that like, it's about building community. It's about building each other up, and so that you can kind of stand against the rhetoric and the gaslighting and the things and say, actually, no, I'm not alone here. I'm not an extremist. There's actually a very large moderate middle that feels the same way that I do. And it's kind of like that way that we can all kind of get together.
Yeah. And I felt alone in my thoughts, and until I started to speak out. And next thing I know, my DMs are flooded with friends just saying, you know what, I wish I could say the things that you're saying, but I can't. I would lose my job, I would lose friends, I would lose family. So there's a whole bunch of people that are self-censoring right now, but they agree. They totally agree. So it's what they call the silent majority. That's what I think.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I guess as we wind down here, I think my question would be to you is, what is the kind of like people who are coming across your content, know who you are? What are some what's like two things you wish people knew about you, just as a person before they kind of go into all the politics stuff?
I don't even know. That's a tough question. That is really tough. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like I'm pretty open about who I am already. So I feel like people might have a pretty good idea already about who I am.
Good stuff. Awesome. Let's see it.
I think one thing I would say, just even talking to you, is like how overwhelmingly kind you are and how caring, and that comes across in some of your videos, but then just in conversation with you. And I think that people kind of don't remember that when they start commenting in the comment section. Like, I think that like Josh experiences this. Like I know that you've said that you have as well, and I have as well, where it's just like people need to maybe take a second to think and be like, there's a person behind this, and who is that?
Yeah, and it's so easy for people to be mean too across from a screen, right? Rather than if you're sitting right in front of them, and that's a big problem that we have going on today.
Yeah. Absolutely. People wished I slipped into the ocean and just drifted off. That's what they're telling me.
Yeah. Actually, somebody called me evil for the first time.
Oh, wow. That's a big word. That's a big word.
I was like, evil. Wow. Okay.
Just because you're anyway, poking fun. Well, it's kind of, it makes me think of the account Libs of TikTok. And
yes,
the whole thing is just reposting videos that liberals have posted on TikTok, and they get so offended. And it's just like you're literally just holding a mirror up to their face. And like, this is what's happening.
Stochastic terrorism, though, right? Isn't that called stochastic terrorism? Yeah. I mean, they got to create words for everything, Yeah.
I learned that one from Justin Trudeau himself. He taught me that one.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
I love when if you watch Jennifer L, she said, and then the government called them all Yahtzees because you have to say it in a way that won't get filtered out by TikTok.
Yeah. I love Jennifer. She's so great.
Oh, she is.
She's so knowledgeable too. I make some political content, but I am nowhere near. I don't have her knowledge at all. So I really enjoy her content.
Yeah, my favorite thing about my relationship with Jennifer personally is because, when she's posting things on TikTok and on Twitter, she's for the most part very professional and very knowledgeable, he said. But man, you get her in the DMs, oh baby, she's a savage, and I love her for it.
Yes, we've had some conversations. Yeah.
And it's funny too because like she's like, you have to understand, she's like, this is just like dry native humor and this is how we work. And I'm like, oh, I'm familiar because like my wife, her family's from Six Nations in Ontario, and her mom was a big political activist for the native community up there. And that was the thing. She had no problem roasting you. She was the kindest lady that you'd ever meet. But like in a second, she could just like, she was very witty. So, and I see the same thing in Jennifer L, where I'm just like, oh man, it is an actual thing.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Shannon, for taking the time out. I know our listeners were super happy to hear you in a different context and kind of hear your story and what you're about. And thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be with us. It really means a lot.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Thank you. That was a great conversation. We loved having Shannon on. Hope you got a lot out of it. We were really super encouraged to be able to kind of hear her out, hear her story, where she's coming from, and hope you got something out of it as well. But we're going to dive into the last leg of the show, baby. We got to keep it light. I got a wildcard segment. And so what we wanted to start doing, me and Reg were talking about, is we're both coming with clips to the table, and we want to surprise each other with it. This week doesn't really work that well because the problem with Reg is he sends me all the things he wants me to look at it every week throughout the week. So I already know what he's bringing, but he doesn't know what I'm bringing to the table. And this is a clip giving context: gambling in professional sports. Is it ruining the game? So a couple NBA players were on a podcast talking about this very issue, and they get right on into it.
Before we begin, though, I have to say, because I have to clear my name here, I have limited myself to only 3 videos per day to send you.
Is that what you've done?
That is what I've done. I do not spam you anymore, because there was a point in time where I was sending you like 15, 20 videos. So I've gotten better. But dude, I think that's just my form of love is sharing viral memes.
No kidding, dude. That's definitely your love language. Absolutely. So that's the scenario. That's what's happening. And this brother talks about how a bench player comes on the play in the end. He's talking about the NBA basketball, and a sub gets subbed in late in the game, and this ends up happening.
Man, I'll tell you a story. I ain't gonna tell you what teammate, bro. One of my teammates got in at the end of the game, scored 4 straight, and he was probably in the game for like, I don't know, a minute. Scored 4 points, got to it. He got a DM, and he barely played.
I know who it is.
He got a DM. He was like, "Why did you score?" They went. He said, and they told it, no cap. They DM'd her like, "Why did you score? You're the reason why I'm still racist."
You're the reason I'm still racist. That killed me. Yeah. So you look confused, because you don't really know sports that well. So there's like an over and under. So there's a situation where a guy's doing garbage minutes. They're betting the under on a specific score. And so this guy comes in, supposed to do nothing, scores 4 points, gets the over on it. It ruins the bet. And this guy gets a DM from some jabroni. He's like, "Why'd you score? You're the reason I'm still racist." So I thought that was comical. That made my week.
Well, now I'm thinking, I'm like, we're covering all of the things.
Definitely are.
We're going sexuality, racism, everything tonight. So
yeah, we're feeling fired up tonight. We're getting the boys going, and this is comical.
Yeah.
Do you want to preface this at all before we start?
Yeah. So basically, I came across this one because I have a motorcycle and I love it. And so when this came across my feed, it was because it has a reference to a motorcycle. But I was not expecting the rest of it, because you have this lady who's apparently an academic, and she has determined that she can tell a person's sexuality by the tonality in their voice. And so I sent this, but I was dying. I watched it like 50 times.
They also studied the way gay and straight people talk.
Hi, nice to meet you. I ride a motorcycle.
Sounds straight to me.
And is straight.
Hi, nice to meet you. I ride an electric motorbike.
Gay. They also...
That's amazing.
I just love it. She's like, gay.
With such confidence, too. That's my favorite part.
And we all know what an electric motorbike is. It's a scooter. And
yeah.
It's like one of the things in the motorcycle community is like, you don't wave to people who ride on scooters. It's like,
wow.
Yeah. It's so when you're on your motorcycle, like everybody gives you the wave.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just kind of a thing you do where it's like, I recognize you. I see you. You know, you're like me. We're in the same community.
Almost like the left. Got it.
Yeah. And although Harley Davidson drivers won't do that.
Oh,
if you ride a Harley.
Pretentious.
Oh yeah, they're very pretentious. They will never wave to a sport bike because anyway.
The there's a whole users of motorcycles.
There's a whole subculture to it. But everybody universally agrees that scooters are lame. And so when this guy's like, "Hi, I ride an electric motorbike," and it's like, "Okay, scooter," and she's like, "Gay." Like, amazing.
Hey, we're here for it, man. I guess I wonder what she thinks of Tesla users.
Yeah,
we out here. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for joining us once again. It was a great show. Talked about a lot of deep things. Hope you got something out of it. I hope you enjoyed our time with Shannon, or I should say Reality Shannon. Make sure you check her out on TikTok. So whatever it is you're doing, whether you be playing some sports,
riding your electric motorbike,
or riding your Harley Davidson, whatever it is you're doing, wherever you are, we love you. We're out. Peace.